does a modern gentleman's watch actually look like? Because the watch world isn't exactly subtle at the moment. Bigger cases, louder designs, more complications, everything's competing for your attention. And while that's great, when you want something expressive, it does leave a bit of a gap when you just want a watch that feels easy. Something you can wear every day in pretty much any situation without having to think too much about it. Well, that's where the Tissot Gentleman has always sat. It's never been about pushing boundaries or reinventing anything, it's just about getting the fundamentals right. Now, with this 38mm version, Tissot has refined that idea even further. Now, at a glance, not much has changed, but actually the biggest update here is also the most important one, which is the size. The Gentleman drops from 40mm down to 38mm, and on paper, that doesn't sound like much, but on the wrist, oh my goodness, it makes such a difference. It brings the watch much closer to what a lot of people would consider that just right size, especially if you prefer something a little bit more classic or balanced. It also places it nicely between those traditional 36mm dress watches and the more modern 40 or 41mm everyday pieces. It's that middle ground that just works for a lot of wrists and a lot of situations. Importantly though, Tissot hasn't thinned the watch out dramatically. It's still around 11.5mm thick, so it keeps that slightly more robust, everyday feel rather than becoming something overtly delicate. And that kind of sums this watch up as a whole. It leans towards refined, but it's certainly not fragile. Now looking at the case itself, the changes are subtle but noticeable. The bezel feels a little bit slimmer, the edges are a little bit crisper, and overall it just comes across as slightly more resolved than before. Nothing dramatic, just a series of small little tweaks that add up to a cleaner, more contemporary look. Up front, you've got a domed sapphire crystal with anti-reflecting coating, and around the back, a screw-down exhibition case back. So if you want to see the movement inside, there you go. Water resistance is still 100 meters, which is exactly what you want from a watch like this. It means that you don't have to baby it. Then there's that dial, which is probably where the most visual change has happened. Tissot is calling this new finish pyramidal, and essentially, instead of a traditional sunburst, you've got these shifting brushing directions across the dial that catch the light differently depending on the angle. It's quite a subtle effect, but it does give the watch just enough texture and depth to stop it feeling dead flat. The layout itself has also been cleaned up slightly. There's less text, a bit more breathing room, and the hour markers are now straight battens instead of the more tapered style from before. The hands are still those polished, faceted dagger shapes which work really well here. Legibility is what you would expect, clean, simple, no fuss. But you do still have a frame date window at 3 o'clock, which some people may find a touch large, but it's very much in keeping with the overall design. And importantly, there's lume where you need it most. So it still remains practical when the light drops. On the wrist, it's paired with a 3-link stainless steel bracelet, brushed on the outer links, polished through the center, which gives it just a bit of contrast without being overtly flashy. It's a familiar setup, and it works. You've also got quick release spring bars, which is a small detail, but a useful one, which means that you can easily swap it out onto leather, rubber, or even a Milanese mesh if you want to change the feel of the watch entirely. And honestly, this is the kind of watch that probably lends itself quite well to that sort of versatility. Inside, you've got Tissot's Powermatic 80, which at this point is a known quantity. It beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour and delivers an 80-hour power reserve, which is still one of the strongest selling points at this level. It also features a Nivacron balance spring, which helps with resistance to magnetism and everyday shocks. So again, it's built with real-world use in mind. And that really is the key takeaway here. Nothing about this watch is trying to be clever for the sake of being clever. It's just solid, reliable, and thoughtfully put together. Now, aesthetically, it would be impossible not to acknowledge that this Gentleman sits within a very familiar design space. There are obvious similarities to some very well-known, much more expensive watches, but that's also part of its appeal. Because what Tissot is offering here is that same kind of clean, versatile, everyday look, just at a much more accessible price point. Now at around $850 US, this sits in a really competitive part of the market. And when you look at what you're getting, automatic movement, 80-hour power reserve, solid build quality, versatile sizing, well, it starts to make a lot of sense. It's not trying to reinvent anything. It's just taking a formula that already works and refining it in ways that actually matter. And in a market where so many watches are trying to stand out, there's something quite refreshing about that. Because sometimes, A gentleman's watch doesn't need to say much at all. It just needs to get everything right. But I am curious to know what you think of the Tissot Gentleman. Why don't you let us know in the comments below? And if you have enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, well, the easiest thing and free thing that you can do, which supports us greatly, is subscribe. It's a free click of the button, but it means the world to us, and it allows us to continually make great content just like this on the Time+Tide channel. See you on the flip side.